నమస్కారం. డాక్టర్ BR అంబేద్కర్ సార్వత్రిక విశ్వవిద్యాలయ విద్యార్థులకు స్వాగతం.
My dear students, today we are going to be discussing an important area of your Bachelor of Public Relations study. The important area is how to prepare a project report. Every student as part of the Bachelor's of Public Relations program has to prepare a project report. The project report carries 100 marks. It is equivalent to one paper of the public relations program. So, you should have a comprehensive idea about how to prepare a project report, what are the major steps which are involved in terms of preparing a project report, what kind of a topic you need to select for a project report, how do you go about collecting data, how to analyze the data which you have collected, how to write a project report becomes important for our discussion. So, today we will be discussing the major steps in a very detailed manner relating to the project report. One of the important things in terms of a project report is selection of a topic. You must always select a topic which interests you. You must select a topic and the subject which you have some background and understanding, or you can select a topic of an organization where you are working or where you have worked earlier, or you can select a topic of an organization where you have got to know some connections, you know someone there, because it becomes easy for you to collect information and data. If you select a topic in which you do not have background, in which you are not interested in, it becomes very difficult to work. Because on a project report sometimes you work for about 1 or 2 months. So, it is important to know that you need to be interested in the subject in which you are selecting. You also need to have background relating to that particular research topic, and you should also know to which organization you should go, whether you know someone there who could help you in terms of trying to provide all the relevant information for writing a project report. So, one of the important things in terms of writing a project report, select a topic. Select a topic which is easy for you to collect information, and when you talk about selecting of a topic should be very focused, precise and exact. A topic cannot be covering a large area. In other words, you cannot work on public relations in a computer industry. You cannot say public relations and education. It becomes very difficult for you to work because the topic is so huge, you will not know where to start. You will be groping in darkness. You will be collecting so much of information and you would not know how to do it. So, it is very important when you are talking about a project report is not essay writing. It is not an extended article. It is not a big feature or a big article. Project report has critical, analytical data collection, and that data needs to be analyzed and interpreted. Any research topic we select for a project report has to be precise, focused. It must have a very narrow scope. It cannot have a broad scope. Every research project for a public relations program of your nature should have a scope. Let me give an example to make my point how a topic can be precise, focused and having a narrow scope. We cannot talk about public relations in a banking industry in India. That becomes very difficult. There are so many nationalized banks, so many private banks, so many cooperative banks. That becomes very huge area for you to cover. The other way of selecting a precise topic would be role of public relations in a banking sector, a case study of State Bank of India. In other words, you are selecting only State Bank of India and you will talk about the role of public relations in State Bank of India, what is the nature of public relations activity in State Bank of India. Another example I could give, there are a lot of hospitals today who are in the activity of doing corporate communication. One can talk about public relations in hospitals. Again, if you are talking about public relations in hospital, it is a very, very wide area. So, one of the important things in terms of writing and working on a research project is to have a very clear, precise focus. It must be very, very narrow. Then it becomes easy for you to collect data. After you select a topic, it is important for writing a research project that you need to do some background research. Why is background research important? You need to introduce your subject. If you are talking about role of public relations in banking industry, you need to talk about what is the position of banking sector in India, how many banks are there in India, what is the kind of revenue generating, what are the banking laws are there, what are the various provisions which are there in the banks, and how banking industry has grown in the last 15-20 years becomes very, very important. Perhaps you can briefly talk about what was the status of banking industry before liberalization process started. You can talk about the status of the banking industry after 1991, and we can talk about the competition between the private banks and the nationalized banks. So, it is important once you select a topic, you need to do background research relating to that particular topic, because you need to comprehensively in about perhaps 4 or 5 pages introduce your subject. You are talking about the banking industry, major developments which have taken place in banking industry, what is the present scenario, and then you will talk about in greater detail, you will give profile of the State Bank of India, because that is the focus of your study. You are only studying State Bank of India, then you will talk about State Bank of India, its history, its growth, its present status, how many branches are there, what is the kind of competition State Bank of India has with other kinds of banks. You need to talk about give a detailed profile of that particular bank. So, that is how you select a topic, and then you give an introduction to the topic. After we give an introduction to the topic, another major step which is involved in terms of working on a project report is to review literature, because every study has to be given a perspective. Every study needs to be contextualized in terms of what are other studies which have been carried out earlier tell us. Are there any studies at all which have been carried out in terms of the role of public relations in banking industry, role of public relations in service sector? There are several studies which are available. You need to quote some of those studies which are called review of literature. Why do we do review of literature? Because I have said you need to give some kind of a perspective, some kind of a focus for your study, because someone who is going to be reading your project report would be reading in the context of certain earlier studies which have been carried out. And what do you quote? How do you, what is important in terms of trying to give in this review of literature? Certain studies which have been carried out, you give the highlights of that particular study. Perhaps the findings of a particular study which has been carried out in terms of banking industry, say public relations played an important role. House journals played an important role in terms of trying to inform customers and clients and shareholders. If that is the finding of that particular study, you quote those studies extensively. If there are about 10 or 15 studies which are there, you need to quote them. Normally, for a project report of for a course of your nature, if you have about 10 to 15 studies which have been carried out, then there will be a good perspective for your study. So, the first step is selection of a topic. After you select a topic, you need to introduce your subject. You have to write a comprehensive introduction relating to the topic you have selected. Then we will do a comprehensive review of literature. After we have done a review of literature, then the need for the study. Why are you carrying out this study? What is the significance of your study? An examiner who is reading your project report should have an idea, are you carrying out this study just because the public relations program says that you have got to do a project and you get 100 marks, or is there anything particular that you would like to highlight in terms of your need for the study? It is very, very important. There are other studies which have been carried out, as I said just now, in terms of your review of literature. There are already 10 to 15 studies which are broadly relating to the banking sector, the role of public relations in the banking sector, and what would be the focus of your study, what is the purpose of your study, why are you carrying out, in what way your study is different from the earlier studies will say need for the study. The relevance of your particular study you need to write perhaps in about 1 or 2 paragraphs. If you explain the need for the study, that would be sufficient. After that, very, very important area in terms of a preparation of a project report, or what are the objectives of your study. Objectives need to be clearly enunciated, clearly described. Any objective for a project report should be absolutely precise. Objectives cannot be ambiguous. Objectives cannot be vague and diffused. If you have vague and diffused objectives, then you will get data which is vague and diffused, and it will become very difficult for you to analyze your data. So, objective formulation for a research project is very, very important. It should be precise and focused. Let me give a couple of examples to make my point in terms of how objectives can be clear. Let us take an example of the role of a house journal in an organization and its impact. You need to clearly mention the study establishes to find out the role and impact of a house journal in terms of its clientele and customers, in terms of its relevance of the contents, the reach. You need to make it very, very clear. Another objective can be how relevant are the contents of the house journal in terms of its publics. You can carry out a survey to find out from them, do you read our house journal? What do you think about the contents of the house journal which we are publishing? Are they relevant? Are they meaningful for you? Once you have clearly established your objectives, you also again need to clearly define the scope and limitations of your study. As we talked about earlier, every study has got a focus, every study has got a scope or limitations. In the scope and limitations, you should clearly mention that the scope and limitations of the study is only relating to a particular organization. The scope and limitation of the study is only limited to a particular house journal, because someone will examine your project report in that kind of a perspective, in that kind of a background. Scope and limitations is another area where we need to look at very precisely, because we will only examine your project report from that kind of a background. After we have talked about selection of a topic, then we talked about introduction, another important area. Then we talked about review of literature, then we talked about need for study. We have also talked about objectives need to be clearly explained for the study. We talked about scope and limitations of the study. Very important area in terms of a very important step in terms of preparation of a project report is methodology. What is the method you are adopting for your study? Any project report is a scientific study. It is a scientific and a logical, rational analysis of a particular problem or a particular issue or a particular topic you have taken. That is where we said initially that a project report is not an essay writing. Project report is not opinion of an individual. Project report is the opinion of others, where you are carrying out the study, their opinion, their perception, their understanding, their viewpoint you are reflecting. So, in methodology, what is the method of your study? Is it a survey method? Is it a case study method? It is a content analysis method? What is a survey method? In a survey method, we are carrying out a survey among the 50 readers of House Journal to find out what do they think about a House Journal published by an organization, how regularly they read, what do they think about the contents of a House Journal, are they finding the contents of a House Journal relevant, meaningful. So, we are carrying out a survey. Most of the project reports are based of a survey. Let me give another example. There are so many AIDS campaigns which are being carried out. You can go and find out the information levels in a village relating to AIDS issue. You carry out a survey, go to the village, talk to the people, find out whether they are aware of the AIDS issue, how much information they have relating to AIDS as a problem, from where did they get that information, who has given that information, did they get that information from a primary health center, did they get information from the media. You are carrying out a survey. Then another kind of a method which we need to talk about in terms of preparation of a public relations project report can be content analysis method. You can analyze the contents of newspapers, you can analyze the contents of a House Journal. It can be quantitative, it can be qualitative. Quantity would mean how much coverage has been given relating to a particular issue or a particular topic or a particular subject. Qualitative would mean what is the nature of its coverage. Is it pro, is it anti, is it neutral, what is the nature of coverage it has given. Another major approach in terms of methodology can be a case study. You can go to a particular organization, observe the people, talk to the people, find out the nature of their work, discuss with them. You also observe, and on the basis of that particularly a comprehensive case study you can go about preparing. So, methodology becomes very, very important. What is the method? Is it a survey method? Is it a content analysis method? Is it a case study method? You have to select. The methodology is directly relating to the objectives of your study. The objectives of your study is to establish the awareness relating to AIDS issue in a village. The awareness can only be established, awareness can only be found out through carrying out a survey. So, there is an interrelationship between the objectives and the method you select for your study. Once you clearly define your objectives, you will be in a position to select the right kind of an appropriate kind of a methodology for carrying out a study. After we select a methodology, another important and a very significant issue relating to preparation of a project report for the public relations course is what is the instrument, what is the tool you have to select. You need to, is it an interview schedule? Is it a questionnaire? An interview schedule is most of the time, if you are the people with whom you are carrying out a study are not educated, are not in a position to read and write, you give them an interview schedule. Otherwise, you prepare a questionnaire. It is very, very important for you to select again the right kind of an instrument, right kind of a tool. And how do we go about preparing and developing an interview schedule is another important area, an important step in terms of writing and preparing a project report for your public relations course. In the interview schedule and questionnaire, normally we will have name of the person, the age group of your respondents, what is their social background, economic background, educational background, income background, occupational background, all that becomes very, very important in terms of carrying out research. In any kind of a research in public relations does not exist in isolation. There are different people who understand a particular problem differently. That is where you need to have some kind of a background relating to the respondents whom you are interviewing. That is the initial 5 or 6 questions you will have relating to that. Later, you will have questions relating to, you have research questions, you have objectives. In other words, objectives are your questions and you need to get answers for your questions. Again, questions need to be precisely worded, because every respondent has to understand your question in the same way. If you are interviewing 50 respondents, all the 50 respondents should understand your question in the same way. Preparation of a project report is a scientific approach. There is logic there, there is rationality there, there is a clear purpose there in terms of trying to get information relating to your project report. In fact, when we are talking about research itself, it is re plus search. We are trying to search, we are trying to find out data relating to a particular issue or a problem which people do not have exposure or understanding. That is where it becomes scientific study. After we have collected data, after we have prepared interview schedule and a questionnaire, you need to collect data, interview respondents, go about collecting information. Once you get all your interview schedules and questionnaires together, a very important step in terms of writing of a research project is presentation of data. What did people say? How many people out of the 50 respondents? What is the response of 10 respondents? What is the response of another 20 respondents? What is the response of another 15 respondents? You need to tell us, and also tell us in terms of presentation of your data, who are the 10 people who said they read House Journal regularly? Who are the 10 people who said they read House Journal occasionally? Why do 10 people read regularly? Why do 10 people read occasionally? Why do 10 people read now and then? Becomes very important. As I said earlier, this data does not exist in isolation, there is a background. Every person reacts to your questionnaire interview schedule on the basis of their own perception, their own understanding and their own background. So, you need to present your data. After presentation of the data, another important step is in terms of analysis of your data. You need to analyze it, you need to interpret your data. Interpretation of the data can be depending upon the organization, interpretation of the data can be depending upon the nature of your respondents and their background. Interpretation of the data can be how long they have been bringing out their House Journal. Interpretation of the data can be in terms of the periodicity of the House Journal. Interpretation of the data can be in terms of the social and economic background of the respondents. That becomes, because all data not only need to be presented, needs to be analyzed. After analysis of the data, you need to have another important step in terms of preparation of a project report is what are your major conclusions, is very, very important. What do you conclude from your study? You need to highlight your conclusions, and conclusions again emerge from the objectives of your study, conclusions emerge from your data presentation of your study, conclusions emerge from your data analysis of your study. What are the major findings of your study? What are the major conclusions of your study becomes very, very important. And another important step, the last step in terms of preparation of a project report for a public relations course, or your what are the references, what are the books, what are the magazines, what are the manuals you refer to. You have given a comprehensive review of literature, you quoted about 10 or 15 studies, you try to give it in bibliography, because all research is based on certain research which is already existing. You have to give various references, magazines, books, newspapers, articles you are referred to. Today there is a lot of information which is available in the internet. If you have used the internet as a source of information in terms of trying to cull out some information in terms of publications, you can also give those kind of sources. And also in terms of field work of this nature, who are the people who you interviewed? Did you talk to the chairman, the managing director? who are the important people you talk to, can also be given in appendix. Appendix can also have maybe copies of the house journal, some photographs, certain important literature you collected from the organization. If that is going to add to the richness of your study, you can give all that in appendix. Let us now briefly summarize what are the major steps involved in terms of preparation of a project report for the public relations course. Number one, you have to select a topic. The topic must be very narrow, must be precise, must be focused. After you have selected a topic, you need to review some literature relating to the topic which you have selected, because you need to give some background information. And when you review literature also, it will also help you in terms of writing a comprehensive introduction relating to. So, number one, what is the topic you have selected for your project report? You need to give a comprehensive introduction, then review of literature, then you need to discuss the need for the study, then you have to give the scope and limitations of the study, and what are the objectives of your study, the methodology for your study, the method you have adopted, the tools you have selected, as we talked about interview schedule or a questionnaire or a case study. After that, data presentation, data analysis, summary and conclusions, bibliography, references, appendix should be given. Once you have selected your topic, you can discuss with your academic counselor who comes and teaches for you regularly, so that he will help you in terms of trying to make your topic more focused, more precise. I hope next time when you prepare your project report, you will try to follow the steps which we have discussed, so that you will be in a position to prepare your project report without much of a worry, with much of a trouble. Wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
మా కార్యక్రమాలపై మీ సూచనలు సలహాలు తెలియజేయండి. మా చిరునామా: డైరెక్టర్, ఆడియో విజువల్ ప్రొడక్షన్ అండ్ రీసెర్చ్ సెంటర్, డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ ఓపెన్ యూనివర్సిటీ, ప్రొఫెసర్ జి రామరెడ్డి మార్గ్, రోడ్ నంబర్ 46, జూబ్లీ హిల్స్, హైదరాబాద్ 500033.